चिकन ठंडा हो गया. Transcriptization of food, so obviously M.A. Srinivas. There should be like a counter of क्या कहते हैं, author counter, scholar counter for every this thing I wrote.
Theorist counter.
Yeah. Theorist counter. Take the name of a theorist. People should take a shot. क्योंकि उनका खाना गंदा और स्मेली होता है ना. What a nuisance. Icky. Something for the vegetarians. Bogle, no? I'm having dinner. It's kebab. You can grab your food too. Sorry, mine's not like the typical red meat. I could have worn red though. I wonder what the association is between red and non-vegetarian. I somehow believe it's got something to do with bloodshed and non-veg being violent. But that's a video for another day. Today we're here to talk about Zomato's Pure Veg Fleet. For those of us who are not blithely unaware, हम समझ रहे हैं कि ये कैसे कास्टिज्म और डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को बढ़ावा दे रहा है and perpetuating practices of untouchability. But for those of us who are, this video is for you. I'm going to argue in two parts. First कि ये pure veg का concept casteist है या नहीं. I will then move on to the arguments people have given in favor of pure veg, and to absolutely nobody's surprise, how right-wingers and right-wing sympathizers like liberals have managed to drag Muslims into this. The notion of pure vegetarian is directly related to the notion of pollution. Normally, मैं anthropology को बहुत गालियाँ देती हूँ for being the colonial and oriental endeavor that it is. But it would be foolish to deny how much we can learn from social anthropologists about our own culture. तो ये pure veg को समझने के लिए let's look at what Louis Dumont has to say. Speaking of how rank is attributed to a caste, कैसे हम एक जाति को ऊंचा और दूसरे को नीचा मानते हैं. This is one of the examples he used. For example, one can imagine the members of a caste saying, "We are vegetarians," which places us above XYZ caste who eat meat, but we allow remarriage of widows, which places us below ABC caste who forbid it. And that's just scratching the surface. Dumont also elaborated Bougle's principles of caste. The first being separation on the basis of rules of caste in matters of marriage and contact, whether direct or indirect. Speaking of Bougle's principles of caste, Dumont says the three principles rest on the fundamental conception and are reducible to a single true principle. इसका मतलब Bougle के जो 3 principles हैं, Dumont के हिसाब से उनका basis एक ही है, namely the opposition of pure and impure. This opposition underlies hierarchy, which is the superiority of the pure to the impure. It also underlies separation because the pure and impure must be kept separate. And it underlies the division of labor because pure and impure occupations must be likewise kept separate. तो चाहे hierarchy हो, separation हो या division of labor हो, सबका basis pure versus impure ही है. The whole is founded on the necessary and hierarchical coexistence of the two opposites. ये हो गया Dumont का binary opposition का concept. Dumont further highlights the state of mind which is expressed by the emergence in the various situations of castes. He calls caste system as a system of ideas, values, which is a formal, comprehensible, rational system. Now mind you, इसका मतलब ये नहीं that the system itself is rational, but ये system का जो basis है, ये कोई logic या underlying rationale के basis पे चलता है. Dumont argued that the concept of purity and pollution is not just about physical cleanliness or uncleanliness. Instead, it is a symbolic representation of social status and power. The Brahmins, by virtue of their ritual purity, are placed at the top of the caste hierarchy. In contrast, the Dalits associated with polluting activities like scavenging and leather work, consuming meat, are placed at the bottom of the social structure. तो ये पवित्र और अपवित्र का अंतर सिर्फ साफ सफाई के बारे में नहीं, बल्कि ये एक प्रतीक है, सिंबल है समाज के दर्जे का और ताकत का, रिलेटेड टू पावर.
कोई सेंस है इस बात की?
Reality is obviously more nuanced and complicated than theories, and Dumas obviously knew that. There are Hindus who do consume meat, and there are lower caste Hindus who, seeking upward caste mobility, are pure vegetarians. A process called Sanskritization. Now, this video isn't about that. What this video is about is the idea of pure veg, and these theories do work well in the case of explaining that, of classifying dietary choices as pure, which by default creates the category of the impure. That's the nature of binaries and of exclusive categories. अगर आप कोई एक कैटेगरी में नहीं आते तो आप ऑटोमेटिकली दूसरी कैटेगरी में आते हो. If you are not one, by default you are the other. If you are not pure, you are by default impure. Dumas goes on to explain the opposition of pure and impure appears to us as the very principle of hierarchy, to such a degree that it emerges with the opposition of superior and inferior. While Dumas applied this idea of pure and impure to dietary habits, and here's the fun part. According to Dumas, the opposition between the pure and impure, the idea of what is pure and impure itself, ये एक कास्ट से दूसरे कास्ट में इतना बदल जाता है, it varies so much from one group to another that it is impossible to regard it as a universal rationale of the caste system. Consider food alone. If one were to trace how vegetarianism was adopted by Brahmins, they would find that Jainism or Buddhism का influence है. Speaking with reference to imitation and extrinsic borrowing of one culture from another, Dumas says there is every reason to think that the Brahmins long ago reacted in a similar way to the heresies of Jainism and Buddhism. Vegetarianism was functional in these sects, and their renouncers enjoyed great prestige. The Brahmins, threatened with being outclassed as spiritual leaders, were goaded into emulation and borrowed vegetarianism. It is even likely that the rivalry between renouncers and Brahmins by itself intensified the practice of vegetarianism.
Hey, start cut!
The fact remains that a vegetarian diet became a fundamental Brahminical feature. What does this mean? Basically, Brahmins इतने insecure हो गए अपने position को लेकर, उनको लगा कि कहीं जैन और बुद्धिस्ट उनसे आगे ना निकल जाए in terms of becoming spiritual. तो ये है borrowing उन features की और उन लोगों से जिनको superior माना जाता है as a social sign and not a functional feature. In this context, the Jain and Buddhist followers who renounced the world and meat-eating habits along with it were superior. To cope with this, Brahmins also adopted vegetarianism, जो ultimately Brahmanism का hallmark बन गया. Dumas goes on to say, thus very likely under the pressure of the ethics of renunciation as found in Buddhism and especially Jainism, a vegetarian diet was adopted by the majority of Brahmins and either directly or through their agency came to prevail as a practice superior to a meat diet. That is, as a mark of purity as opposed to a mark of impurity. Veena Das affirms Dumas' stance in her article, Sacred and Profane in Hinduism. She says that the central structural feature of Hindu society for Dumas is the opposition between the pure and the impure, जो हमने अभी just समझा. This opposition, according to him, is not only manifest in the social order but also in the sacred order. Dumas demonstrates this by an analysis of the characteristic of Ayanar, a folk deity in Tamil villages. There is some variation in the characteristics of Ayanar in different villages in Tamil Nadu. According to the myths surrounding his origin, he was born of the gods Shiva and Vishnu when the latter had assumed a female form to beguile the demons. Ayanar is sometimes described as the king of demons. He is often associated with various village goddesses whose essential function is to protect the village against epidemics. And the principal goddess among these is Mariamman, the smallpox goddess. Ayanar is also associated with Karupan, locally known as the black god in the lineage pantheon of some castes such as Parimalai Kalar. on whom Dumas relies heavily. Here he appears as a vegetarian god, as opposed to the meat-eating dark god Karupu. Describing the lineage temples, Dumas says that the temple is divided between the meat-eating gods and vegetarian gods. In analyzing the lineage pantheon, Dumas argues that the sacred order has to be understood in relation to the social order. Therefore, the relation between the vegetarian and meat-eating gods is the same as the relation between the vegetarian and meat-eating men, which is that of superiors to inferiors. Thus, the distinction between the two types of gods is a particular form of opposition of purity and impurity, which is the principle of the caste system. That's enough about Dumas. If we're talking about religion, we obviously cannot overlook the big daddy of sociology, Emile Durkheim. In Elementary Forms of Religious Life, Durkheim presupposes the classification of all things into sacred and profane. There is an opposition between these two spheres, जिसको carefully regulated किया जाता है through rites and ceremonies, विधि के जरिए. The sacred is that which is set apart, considered holy and venerated, or dreaded and avoided. Sacred usually एक higher position पे होता है, valued more than the profane things, and its identity and power are protected by social rules. The profane, on the other hand, refers to the mundane, ordinary aspects of day-to-day existence. The sacred and profane are kept apart, says Durkheim, because they are heterogeneous, different, antagonistic, always in conflict, and isolated, separated. Rites therefore exist to mediate between the two worlds, or sacred and profane. Let us take an example. Why are believers not allowed to wear shoes inside a temple? चप्पल या जूता पहनना एक रूटीन चीज है, एक प्रैक्टिकल, therefore एक profane act है. Temple माना जाता है holy, a pure place. It is sacred. The floor of the temple must therefore be protected from the polluting dirt of our shoes. ऐसे sacred और profane को एक दूसरे से अलग रखा जाता है. Rites can be negative, यानी कि वो rites जिनसे हम sacred और profane को एक दूसरे से दूर रखने की कोशिश करते हैं, like purification rites, penance or suffering, maybe fast. Another important aspect is hygiene, which is often invoked to justify ideas about impurity. In reality, even though कुछ hygiene से related association होगा, in Durkheim's view, rites serve to sustain the intensity of religious beliefs. Applying this to the context of vegetarianism would mean doing a Shuddhikaran puja if you've come in contact with a non-vegetarian, or purifying utensils used by non-vegetarian. This is not the complete picture, as it has a religious notion. In the paper Dirty Food, Racism and Casteism in India, Dolly Kicken uses Ganda Khana and draws from the Dalit experience of humiliation and discrimination when it comes to food to speak to the racism that people from Northeast India experience. She says Northeast migrants के ज़्यादातर accounts और experience जो racism और casteism के होते हैं, उनका main character है खाना, such as fermented meats, plants, fish and meat. While these actions can be categorized as social exchanges and differences about food choices, they signify a pattern of labeling founded on the caste system. She does so by drawing upon food and more broadly eating practices and habits to show how caste terms such as filthy and dirty, which mark Dalit communities as polluting bodies, are often applied to communities from Northeast India. Basically, जो language Dalit communities के लोगों के लिए इस्तेमाल होती है, जो गंदा जताने के लिए use होती है, वही language Northeast Indians के लिए use होती है, especially उनके eating habits और food के लिए. But obviously, there is a difference in these two communities and their experiences. In the case of Northeast, their food culture and dietary practices are categorized within a civilizational framework of savagery that unsettles the national sensory of social order. On the contrary, irrespective of the caste violence against Dalits, their Indianness has never been questioned. So yes, Dalit communities को काफ़ी violence face करना पड़ता है, पर उसके बावजूद कभी उनके इंडियन होने पर सवाल नहीं उठता. पर नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडियंस और उनके खाने को ऐसे पेश किया जाता है जैसे वो हमारे नेशनल सेंसरी और सोशल ऑर्डर को डिस्टर्ब करते हैं खाने की गंदी स्मेल की वजह से, This disgust towards food that communities from Northeast India consume shows how caste authority and privilege mirror the politics of purity and civic order. For example, in 2017, the Delhi police brought out resources such as booklets and awareness campaigns that highlighted how migrants cooking and eating smelly food were disturbing the social order of peace. क्योंकि उनका खाना गंदा और स्मेली होता है ना, what a nuisance, icky. These dynamics and reasonings don't just create and reinforce caste-based superior versus inferior food cultures, but are presented as a civic nuisance to the poor upper caste vegetarian Brahmins who live around Northeast Indians, Muslims, Dalits, and other buggy, nasty meat eaters. This way of labeling highlights how caste and racism operates on a foundation of superiority. Obviously, अगर कोई खाना गंदा भी है, इसका मतलब ये है कि कोई दूसरा खाना साफ और अच्छा भी होगा. ये बात स्पष्ट तरीके से ऊंच और नीच की बात है. And what's the best way to bring tribal communities from Northeast India and other meat eaters within the caste of Hindu fold? First and foremost would be transforming their food choices and eliminating beef, pork, and other unclean tribal choices from it. The equation of the Dalit body with filth, unclean, and pollution is pervasive in upper caste actions and minds. This casteist trope and practice racially mark people from Northeast India and their food cultures too. इसका मतलब कि जो दलित लोगों को, दलित बॉडीज को गंदा और प्रदूषित और घृणा से देखने का जो अपर कास्ट लॉजिक है, यही बर्ताव और यही कास्टिस्ट लॉजिक नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडियंस की बॉडीज को और उनके फूड कल्चर्स को भी प्रभावित करता है. और क्योंकि ये प्रिंसिपल्स कास्ट ऑर्डर के नजरिए में रखे गए हैं, जो खाना लोअर कास्ट लोग खाते हैं कास्ट ऑर्डर के बाहर, वो अपने आप गंदा हो जाता है. So cooking and eating of lower caste and communities outside the caste system are labeled as dirty. An integral part of Brahminical power is then based on controlling and defining what clean and dirty food is. Matlab, I know there are many threats by the poor vegetarians who are like Indian food, especially those in foreign countries, that Indian food isn't just butter chicken and naan, but contrary to the representation about Indian cuisine as rich and diverse, an upper caste culture dominates and dictates food practices. और ये सिर्फ फूड प्रैक्टिसेस पे लिमिटेड नहीं है, ये बाकी चीज़ों पे भी असर करता है. Social exclusions grounded on caste dietary sensibilities influence and define civic sensibility, social relations, including accommodation choices in urban India. For instance, housing complexes exclusively for upper caste owners who are pure vegetarian are not new. 1996 में बीजेपी के इलेक्शन मैनिफेस्टो में बीफ बैन इंक्लूड किया गया था. Critiquing this, Kanchalaya argues that such food campaigns emerge from Brahminical Hindutva consciousness. कि ये बैन Brahminical Hindu mentality से उभर कर आ रही है. Underlining the upper caste logic in regulating food practices, he explains how Dalits and Bahujan castes, besides Muslims and Christians, do not share this dietary ethos of Brahmins. इसके बावजूद कि जो ब्राह्मणों की डाइट की प्रकृति है, उसमें मुस्लिम और क्रिश्चियंस क्या, दलित और बहुजन भी नहीं आते, उससे सहमत नहीं है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 2005 में बीजेपी के बीफ बैन मैनिफेस्टो को सही ठहराया. So the 1996 BJP beef ban manifesto was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2005. Currently, 24 out of 29 states have laws prohibiting cow slaughter. यही नहीं, 2011 आते आते इस बैन का पालन ना करने की सजा 6 महीने से 7 साल तक बढ़ा दी गई थी. By 2011, the sentence for infringing on this ban was extended from 6 months to 7 years. और हम सब जानते हैं कि ये सजा कुछ भी नहीं है. And if we're talking about caste, how can we leave out Baba Sahib? Pollution, Ambedkar says, is so deeply embedded in the Hindu caste system that the Shudras were prohibited from walking on the street where a Brahmin walked or entered a market. The Dalit body was a pollution-bearing presence. Among other things, Ambedkar underlines how food practices such as cooking and eating played an integral role in retaining the purity and distinction of the Hindu social organization. Therefore, routine food shaming in hostel dining rooms at Delhi University or across campuses of the Indian Institute of Technology reveals a thriving caste culture. Just like everything else, food also is political. So are the conflicts surrounding food practices. In 2012, violence erupted after Dalit students organized a beef festival in Hyderabad to celebrate their food culture and protest the domination of Brahminical food culture. In 2017, two constables from Nagaland armed police were interrogated by the police after complaint about foul smell from their kitchen. The caste reaction against dirty food is a constant anxiety. The boundary between vegetarians is the upper caste Hindus and non-vegetarians belonging to lower caste Muslim, Christian communities is a simplistic distinction. Yet, recognizing vegetarianism as being associated with the upper caste practice is to also recognize how smell is central in shaping food-based exclusion and caste discrimination. Vegetarianism is a dominant marker for the upper caste housing associations, which is masked in a language of taste and aesthetics. मुंबई के अर्बन डेवलपर्स और रियल एस्टेट एजेंट्स जो गेटेड अपार्टमेंट्स में अपर कास्ट मारवाड़ी गुजराती और जैन लोग घर बेचते हैं, वो भी जानते हैं कि उनके ग्राहक अपनी बिल्डिंग में नॉनवेज खाने की बू नहीं बर्दाश्त करेंगे। तो आपको लगता है वो जोमेटो के रेड कपड़े वाले नॉन वेज फ्लीट को बर्दाश्त करेंगे और उसको चैन से जीने देंगे? द अपर कास्ट एंजाइटी ऑफ फिल्दी बॉडीज, Dalits and dirty food from northeast India is used to oppress marginalized communities and diverse food cultures. Not just that, even secular and civic regulation to clean the nation like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan rests on a caste philosophy to govern the dirty and inferior citizens. Because after all, whose services do the upper caste Hindus seek to dispose the garbage and the carcasses of cattle and human? तो पवित्रता, पूजा पाठ, प्योरिटी एंड सेक्रेड ये सब अपर कास्ट लोगों की होती है और वही इन सब चीज़ों की परिभाषा भी बताते हैं, पर उसकी जिम्मेदारी आ जाती है लोअर कास्ट लोगों पर. इट इज ब्राह्मणिकल लॉजिक दैट डिफाइंस द बाउंड्रीज ऑफ ऑर्डर, civility, cleanliness and hygiene, but the responsibility lies on lower caste people. And there we have our beloved right-wingers who have somehow turned this into a Hindu versus Muslim issue. And how? Apparently, pure veg is the same as halal, except it's not halal. Halal literally means permissible and haram means forbidden. Literally, even stealing is haram. So congratulations on following the halal way if you don't steal. That is if you're not Modi, Ambani or Adani. Comparing halal with pure veg is straight up false equivalence, because not only is there no sense of superiority in that consuming halal makes you superior, nor is there any othering of those who don't consume halal meat. Halal is just a prescription of how you must eat your meat, if at all you wish to consume it. But if you're not a Muslim, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. It definitely doesn't make you inferior if you don't eat halal meat. But it doesn't end there. Cow titty juice obsessed pure vegetarians would then point out, well, yeah, halal is just cruel. It's torture to extend an animal's death for so long. Some have gone so far as to say halal cartels don't allow jhatka meat sellers to open shops. And as absurd as that sounds, I will address both of this. The reason some people prefer halal meat is because when the animal is slaughtered in a halal manner, it prevents the blood from coagulating and ensures thorough blood drainage. This helps in preventing disease transmission as toxins are rejected, and it keeps the meat clean and hygienic and gives it a longer shelf life. And when I say halal meat is healthier, there is for sure someone going to come up to me and say, please, no, meat consumption is healthy. And I'd agree with that if the argument was about meat consumption. Your argument wasn't against meat consumption, it was against halal meat consumption. In fact, some even go so far as advocating for jhatka meat. So yeah, that's why I even brought it up why people choose to consume halal meat. Contrary to popular belief that halal slaughter prolongs the suffering of the animal, draining the blood of the animal actually makes the animal unconscious after 15 to 20 seconds. In some abattoirs in Western countries, slaughterhouses use stunning methods before slaughtering the animals so that it doesn't feel much pain. As far as halal cattle is concerned, and yes, people have actually used the term seriously. A quick Google search will show you just how many Jhatka meat shops operate in Mumbai alone. Granted, it's not as much as the number of halal meat shops, but I chalk it down to demand and supply. There's simply more demand for halal meat. Honestly, I am not even sure why I'm even arguing against these bad faith arguments and dignifying them with a response. It's clear when you start advocating for Jhatka meat against halal meat that you don't care about animal welfare or animal rights. If you really cared about the well-being of animals, then you would commit to the cause. Go vegan. Follow a plant-based diet. At least you won't be a complete and total hypocrite. And it'd be easier to hide your Islamophobia under the guise of caring about animals if you're vegan. Otherwise, it's pretty transparent and shallow if you're trying to yell at me about halal meat with a mouthful of cheese and milk and dahi. What's more humane? Killing an animal in one go for meat, or forcefully impregnating it so that it can start producing milk and torturing it every day because you want the titty juice and then some, fermented this time. I am all for veganism and going plant-based for the betterment of the environment or for the betterment of our health or just for the fact that you don't think that animals are a species below us. That's great. But show some consistency. It is clear that the impurity of the untouchables is conceptually inseparable from the purity of the Brahmin. They must have been established together, or in any case, have mutually reinforced each other, and we must get used to thinking of them together. In particular, untouchability will not automatically or instantly disappear until and unless the purity of the Brahmin is radically devalued. After all, Dumas says it best, the religion of gods is secondary and the religion of caste is fundamental. That's all from my side. I will hopefully see you sooner than probably 1 year from now. I promise I will come back and be better at uploading these damn videos, but it just takes time. And if you like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them down in the comments. Write essays, publish papers, I don't know, tag me, just whatever you have to say. I will see what I can respond to that.